He really was everything you see in person when you get, prolonged exposure. And some people, Mark Hamill wrote this today. He's phenomenal at expressing things that a lot of us feel, by the way. But it's something that I've always said about Stan is, a lot of times people say like never meet your heroes, right? It'll never measure up to what you want them to be in your head and kind of the fantasy that you may have had about who they are and what they represent. And a lot of people have carefully crafted their public persona. Stan was as genuine as could possibly be. The, sweet, loving, fun kind of uncle vibe that you get from Stan is exactly what he was like every single time that I got the honor and privilege of interacting with him. Think about a lot of these characters that Elvin was mentioning, and the things that Stan's known for creating, and the way that they've touched our lives. Stan did a lot of amazing things, and he was a trailblazer in a lot of ways, not just in literally getting comics out there and bringing them to the forefront. Stan really, we all know that a lot of the characters were co-created by other amazing artists, right? Jack Kirby, Stephen Ditko, et cetera, Todd McFarlane, et cetera. But when it comes to artists and their work, a lot of times you need leadership past the creativity. And that was maybe Stan's greatest gift. He had the vision, right? And he guided these incredibly talented people that he worked with. And a lot of what we have today is because he had the vision to see kind of going right at DC and kind of created a little bit of a comic war in the 60s and 70s. And that led to the popularity rise, and it led to each side kind of stepping their game up and giving us better and better material that we would then fall in love with strong enough that it would become mainstream pop culture over the last 20 years. On top of that, he was also very progressive, especially for his time, right? He took a lot of chances, did a lot of things that other people weren't ready to do in the creative industries. A lot of representation for minorities, for women, for people of color. And it's possible he could have done more, but by comparison, he did a lot. And not just in creating those characters, but if any of you are not familiar with Stan's soapbox, this was something that was written in the back of comic books in Marvel in the late 60s and 70s, where Stan would actually take on kind of, he would do a number of things with it. He would just talk about like what it's like in the Marvel office for readers that might want to know. He would talk about creation of some of the characters and things like that, but he would take a stand on social issues, and really, especially just anti-bigotry. It was a big thing for him. And he would take this stand pretty courageously, and it's just one of the hundreds of thousands of reasons that Stan's an amazing presence. And while we're all kind of emotional, and it's been a very emotional day, I can't think of a single person that has lived as much as Stan Lee lived. That guy created worlds that are as real as ours today. I mean, you, in a lot of places, in a lot of ways, pretty soon at Disneyland, you'll be able to walk into worlds that Stan created, and the way that they are so real on screen for us and to immerse and to feel. We feel a lot of things when we read his books and when we watch movies that are based on worlds that he created. We feel a lot of things there that we sometimes don't feel here, right? And a lot of us kind of run to that, to have those feelings, those highs, those lows, heartbreak, victory, friendship, all of that kind of stuff. And it was, man, nobody has done more with 95 years on this earth than Stan Lee has done, and left such an incredibly positive legacy that will never be forgotten, right? for for us, for the rest of our days, for our children's days, you know, we will be watching Marvel films and celebrating heroes that Stan Lee created. He was our hero's hero. And, you know, as emotional as it is, I could not feel more sense of satisfaction that, you know, Stan did everything he possibly could in this world. I know the last year was really hard for him after Joni passed away. And, you know, for those of you that have varying beliefs, you know, he's with Joni, and he probably would not want it any other way. He's a very funny guy. He's a very funny guy. And he would be smiling right now. And even people today that have been doing that meme with the turning to dust thing, and I've seen a couple of them, I was mad the first one I saw, but the honest truth, Stan would be laughing at it. He really, really would. Amazing sense of humor. And he really, for all the success and for all the people that gathered to you know, meet him at a con, to take a picture with him, like, he really never fully, not that he didn't understand why it was happening, but he was still in like a humbled disbelief that it was happening, you know? He really, really was. I mean, I made, you know, funny coloring books, and everybody loves them, you know? He was at the original Comic-Con down in the bottom of the Cortez Hotel in a basement, right? Sitting there with George Lucas and Jack Kirby might have still been around for that one. I want to say it was the three of them were like the big guests at the very first Comic-Con. You know, and today, basement of the hotel, it has every room of every hotel for, you know, 30 miles. And even though he watched it from start to finish and created it, he was always humble and, you know, just taken aback by what's become of that work, right? And he grew up in a time when it was not glamorous to be a comic book writer or artist. He was probably laughed at, I would imagine, by peers and family members that wanted him to go get a real job and, you know, that kind of thing. Well, sell Marvel for $4 billion, and I wonder how many smiles and nods he got from anyone that might still have been around. So, you know, at the end, there's really no words that can properly put into perspective what Stan did and what he meant to all of us. Yeah, I had an amazing time every time I got to speak to him. I always walked away just with amazing energy, and not like meeting an icon or any of that. Just like, he always made you feel good about yourself, right? You know, and he would ask you about whatever you were doing. I interviewed him. We just couldn't work out a time where I could like get out of a costume and into something more appropriate to talk to him in, so I had to interview him dressed as frickin' Mugatu from Zoolander, which makes no sense. But he asked me about, he's like, you know, he asked what the character was, and I explained. He was like, oh, you know, I saw you know, commercials that I never got to see the film. He's like, you actually look like the Collector. I'm like, well, let's see where you would say that. But and he asked me about putting the costume together and why I liked the character. You know, and he cared about having personal interaction with people. And he cared just in general. He was an amazing Noah that could be made. And Halle Berry had to be Storm. And I think we all wish that Jack Nicholson was 20 years younger to play Wolverine, and so we didn't know what to think about Hugh Jackman.
Why does that?
But you know, but yeah, I remember those days and connecting with the few people, and I joined the AV Tech crew and knew absolutely nothing about anything technical, but I wanted to be able to talk with other nerds, and that's where I could find them. So, you know, and that brought me and my friends at that time together, and then the internet happened, and we found places to congregate and talk about things, and Comic-Con got bigger, and people started going to that from all over. And there were Comic-Cons in other cities, and now I have amazing friends around the country. And it's just amazing because, there's a handful of things that drove all of that, right? If you were to categorize it, it comes down largely to DC, George Lucas, anime is one big ball, and Stan Lee, right? There's a lot of other little things we all love, Firefly and stuff like that, but if we talk about the big stuff that brings us together, it's those big things: Star Trek, Star Wars, DC, Marvel, and so many people that are dear parts of my life would never have known if Stan Lee didn't start drawing funny little characters in, the 50s and 60s. So he's an amazing man. He did a lot for this world, and he should be remembered with just an incredible amount of joy, as sorry as we are that he's gone. An incredible amount of joy for what he did for us. I really don't think I could say anything more than that, so.
Thank you, Bernie Bregman. That was great. Anybody else want to come up here and say a few words about Stan? Maybe how he influenced your life, or maybe you've met him? Anyone here? Anyone left that want to say a few words before we... There you go. Walk on up, my man. Anyone that wants to say something, feel free to just line up here in the corner. Please. And again, guys, thank you for coming down here. We really appreciate it. It warms my heart, even though it's a little chilly now in California. But it warms my heart to see how many people really care about Stan and how much he's changed our lives.
Hi, local nerds or faraway nerds. Nerds United. So, I don't know how old you guys are, but I'm going to date myself because I don't care. But I'm 37 years old. Proud, hot 37-year-old. And I grew up in an era, which some of you would remember, when geek was not chic. It was not cool to play with Marvel cards and trade them in the schoolyard. It was not cool to watch X-Men, and announce it to everybody. If you were a boy, maybe. If you were a girl, absolutely not. And if you were found out to be a nerd girl, you were a hot commodity, because there wasn't many that were openly, nerd. So, Stan Lee gave me the courage to be myself. I found a lot of inspiration through the X-Men because they were flawed and they were misfits and they were, the black sheep. And so I didn't find a whole lot of genres like that outside of Marvel at the time. So Stan Lee gave me courage to buy comics and be fierce and be a woman with power, whether it be Storm or, take someone's power like Rogue. But I thank him for that. I collected everything from Doctor Strange to everything, and I used to have crates of it everywhere. And I actually got the privilege to meet him in 2013, and I couldn't even say much to him, so I just giggled a lot and then gave him a hug. But I wanted to come all this way, I'm from Lake Elsinore, just to say, Stan the man, thank you for everything. That's it.
All the way from Lake Elsinore, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Who else would like to come and say something?
Can we just retcon like the past week?
Please. Just pull a Marvel and retcon it.
So this is David. He's the owner of Toyzilla down here.
Thank you guys for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. Yeah, I was debating whether to be open tonight, but we're normally closed on Mondays, so I figured why not be open, to honor tonight. I was thinking about Stan Lee a lot, and I was lucky enough to meet him a number of times. And I know there's a lot of controversy also about, did he create all these Marvel characters? What was his actual involvement? And I thought about it, I was like, even if he did not, create the Marvel Universe, his influence and his impact is just unarguable, incredible. And the very first time I met him was at a small convention I grew up in Washington, D.C., and this was like the 80s. And as some of you mentioned, comics were not as big as they are today. Marvel was bankrupt. There was not like cartoons on TV all the time with Marvel superheroes. And it just wasn't considered that cool. And I was into comics at a very early age. Before I could read, my mom would read comic books to me. And I just would love looking at the pictures. But I didn't know who made comics. And it was really like one of my very first comic book conventions. I actually met Stan Lee, and he came out to Virginia. And I met him, and I met other artists and writers. But he had just the most powerful presence of anybody. And he, like other artists, I saw them, they're kind of like hunched over, they're maybe not looking you in the eye. They seemed almost embarrassed or ashamed about what they're doing. I'm like, come on. And then here, Stan Lee was so powerful and so positive about, the Marvel, about all the creators he worked with, the artists. I mean, he just promoted everybody in such a powerful and loving way, and promoted all the characters. And it was just incredible to me that, because I've never seen anyone that optimistic, that positive, that outgoing, and that loving towards everyone he worked with, and the characters too. He just loved them. I mean, it seemed like there was a piece of him in every single character that he was involved with. So I just had a really, I remember when he signed my comic, it was such a powerful signature. When he shook my hand, it was like so intense. And he just, I remember he told me, he's like, whatever you do, just give it your all. Give it your all, and that's the way he lived his life. He wasn't apologetic about anything he did. He was so proud. He was like the proudest guy I think I ever knew. And I got to interview him a couple times later, and he didn't change. I mean, I was like, where does he summon this strength, this power? I mean, it was just incredible. And so, I mean, I would say definitely, I wouldn't have pursued comics, entertainment, a lot of what I did if not for people like Stan Lee, who were that positive and that, just positive about life and about this culture, pop culture. It's not something to be embarrassed about. It's not something to be ashamed about. It's, being a nerd is a cool thing now. And now I think it's finally become embraced. Now that we have these huge, big Marvel movies, it's like, man, everyone goes to see it. There's, no one, it's not, a shameful thing. You can dress in like a Spider-Man hoodie and out in public, and it's not Halloween. It's cool. and I really believe even if Stan Lee did not create all these amazing characters, he's the one that made them great. He made them Marvel and powerful and awe-inspiring and, loved by everyone. So thank you, Stan Lee.
Very well said. Thank you, David. Make sure to visit David's store. It's wonderful. Anybody else want to come up here? I saw a few hands earlier. There you go. Come on through. Let's give us your name, please.
Hey guys, my name is Mario Thomas. Hey. I look at him a little bit different than a lot of people. I'm actually a costume designer, but I got into food. Long story. But this guy, he inspired me to create such amazing things. He's so peaceful and just a nice dude. He's like that uncle. Like he said, he's just that uncle next door. I mean, the uncle that you can go to and your problems. I remember one time I was in my Star Wars suit and I saw him and I was like, all right, cool, this is my chance. I'm finally gonna meet Stan Lee, here we go. And it was at a little place called Frankenstein's. Oh, you know it?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm preaching to the choir. So I'm there and I'm all dressed up and Stan comes up to me and goes, damn, that is an awesome suit, right? And I'm like, oh, thanks. You want me to sign it? And I'm like, yeah, George Lucas would be kind of pissed. So I was looking around like, where can I have him sign on my suit and I turned it down. No. It's okay. I had him sign something else. But I remember that walking away, I'm like, man, he could have signed my helmet and did this. And he goes, you know what? Whatever you do, I respect that you love Star Wars and you didn't want me to sign that. But if you have anything else, I'll sign that for you. And that just goes to a testament of how he is. He's just really loving. And he inspired me. I remember when I was a little kid, I was kind of poor, like, I don't know, probably like everybody else. But I was super poor, so I really identified with Spider-Man, and how he had hard luck. And so here I am, little black kid trying to climb the wall, right? Yeah, right? And that didn't work, so I was like, shit, let me try a cape and try to jump off, because my first superhero, I gotta be honest, is Superman, but number 2 was Spider-Man, and then came the Hulk. And so he's very much a positive influence, and this guy, he changes lives. Like if you look right now, like superhero movies are number 1. When does that ever happen? Remember Channel 5? Anybody from LA?
Yeah.
We used to have to wait like a year and see Spider-Man, and there's like rope coming out of his head. Yeah, like the rope web, and you're like, what is going on? So now we've got 8 quality movies. And you know, Infinity War kind of threw me for a loop. I knew it was coming, but I was like, damn, really? Gamora? I was like, all right, Stan, you're right, he's okay and all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, they're coming back, but you can't say anything to like the new guys. They don't know or read the comics, and you're like, oh my God, it's over. But also, I wanted to thank Stan also. You know, God bless him. I know he's a believer. Wesley Snipes actually kind of helped Marvel out. All this stuff that you're seeing right now, Blade, right? So Stan Lee couldn't really afford. Marvel just didn't have the funds, and they're on the verge of bankruptcy, and they couldn't do a lot of things financially. And Wesley came in and saved them, and he poured his own money into Marvel. That's how much. That's the power of Stan. He's the ultimate hype man. Forget Flavor Flav. This is the hype man. He can. I'm telling you, he can sell anything to you, and that's his power. He's just so positive that you just want to get on board with whatever he's got going on. And Wesley did it, and the next movie was Spider-Man, right? So that was it. That was a jumping point for Marvel. Now we're getting our Spider-Man back from Fox and all these deals. I mean, come on, aren't you guys happy? X-Men? X-Men's coming back home. Come on. So, you know, we got to see what's gonna happen with Deadpool, right? With Disney. Hopefully they don't make it PG. But you know, honestly, guys, I'm so happy. I raced up on my motorcycle, and I was like, just going fast. I don't know if there's any cops here. I was going fast. But when I got here, I was like, oh my God, these guys are paying tribute to Stan. Like, he is such a positive force in the world, and he's gone, but there's a lot more out there. Like, there's his son. We have no idea what he's gonna do, you know, and hopefully he's anything like his father. You know, there's a lot of positivity out there. So just honor him and be happy. I know he's gone, and, you know, I was trying not to cry, but it happened. And I just love you guys. We're all the same, right? Yep. We're all the same.
Yeah.
It's cold to be riding a motorcycle, dude. It's a strong man. Motorcycles are very cool. Anyone else want to come up here and say a few words about Stan? You want to come up? Come on. We got a new fan here. What's your name?
Hi everyone. Thank you, Stan Lee, for superheroes, because our superheroes are amazing, because like they have a lot of superhero powers, and like they save the world from like all of the evil guys and stuff. Last time me and my dad went to Comic-Con, I saw Stan Lee, and we met and we shook hands. I really think for all superheroes because you know that they're amazing. They save us from all bad guys and stuff. And use their superpowers. So, thank you to Stan Lee.
Thank you very much. It's simple as that, right, guys?
Yeah.
Fights the bad guys. Let's do it. Thank you very much. Want to come up? Let's give us your name, please.
Hey, evening, everybody. My name is Justin. Nice to meet you all. Hi. Now, I don't have anything too profound to say. I don't have a personal experience meeting Stan Lee or getting anything autographed when LA Comic Con was going on and everything. But I was just thinking about something all day, just processing, the passing of the great Stan Lee. And I was just thinking to myself, it's like, I didn't have any pain in my heart. It didn't really hit me because we kind of saw it all coming. At least I did. I shouldn't speak for everyone else, but I've been kind of worrying about that. It's like, how long are we going to have Stan Lee while we process this experience we have with MCU and Marvel Netflix and all the wonderful things to come, things like that, these movies, the great comic books that have been coming out, the lineups, and, it just kind of hit me. I did have something to say. I was just sitting here, just, it's an individual, and I want to say that we all know Stan through his work. We know his story. But the one thing I didn't think about, just until like past few minutes, Stan Lee gave us a home and a family. He gave us characters. He gave us stories. He gave us different levels of media and entertainment to enjoy the stories and the characters. And through that experience, he created not only a world, not only a universe, but something we can all be a part of and something we all share. We know him. And I don't feel sadness that he's gone. I just think about the backlash and the explosion of all the wonderful things that are going to come from this loss. Just today, it brought us all together that he was gone. And I do see a lot of great things happening in the future for the world of comics. And there's a lot of business and finances and things like that. But you think about how long this man lived, how much work he contributed, and through all the generations that came in through all those contributions, how much further we're going to go with his work. And that's just one thing that really just kind of hit me, just standing here. Like, he gave us a lot. He gave us hope. He gave us, in a world that seems to be losing its morality, it seems like every day we get closer and closer to the edge. We still reminded by, things in entertainment, things in make-believe and imagination. And he did it with superheroes. Superheroes that all, in a sense, have their own issues and problems and personalities and struggles. And, through it all, they find a way, they find hope. And it's something that we all share and have in common with Stan Lee's work, with all these superheroes that we have. I know me particularly, I was just thinking about my earliest memories with Marvel or anything comic book related. And my first, anybody can think about it. It's something we're going to think about tonight too. It's like, what was your very, very first encounter or experience with anything that was created by Stan Lee? And I thought about it. I think the first thing that ever happened for me was the Pride of the X-Men pilot episode. And that memory stayed with me because I was only 4 when it came out. I'm born in 87. And I remember Ninja Turtles was the biggest thing. But I remember, in between there, in the back of my mind, way in the back of my mind, there was this one episode that I just couldn't get my mind off it. It was X-Men. I remember the theme song. I only remember a couple of clips. And then, hey, maybe about 20 years later, I guess YouTube was new, and it was the first thing I looked for was the Pride of the X-Men pilot episode. And I was just like, whoa, it's really here. Oh my God. And I thought about it, we always come home. We always come home because of the wonderful work that was created by, by Stan Lee and by Marvel and all the writers and artists. I think about, my life, the past 30 so years, just thinking about all the different things that I've come to enjoy and learn, and I would move on and things like that. And I always come back to something that was related, that was touched by Stan Lee, by Marvel. We all were. Everybody was. Who wasn't? whoever had a positive reaction by something that was hit by nostalgia that Stan Lee made. Think about it. It's like that cartoon or comic book, things like that. And I know for a fact the X-Men was definitely the comic book I related to the most because I, grew up in an impoverished family who hasn't come from a family with some type of drama or issues. And you think about the X-Men and how not only were they a family, based on not so much on circumstances, but how they had to depend on one another to, deal with survival and things like that, and had to unite and be a part of something despite, anything the world had to say around them. It was something I just processed throughout the course of my own life too, because I know what it's like to grow up being bullied, things like that, and had to think about the things that I cared about most were the things that I had to hold on to through the struggle. So being bullied, things like that, for what you believe or what you enjoy, things like that, it just builds your character more. And as I get older, I would always revisit the comic books and I would always see a story about a character that had an origin story that's very similar to children or to adolescents or to adults. And it's something that's just deeply ingrained in all of us. And I think about that and it's just like, Stan Lee was always there with it. So I don't think he's gone. But as far as I'm convinced, the future, Stan's gonna always be a part of us no matter what. And he's given us everything that we need to always look back on as we go forward without him. So that's all I want to contribute. I know there's other people who want to talk and say nice things. So here you go. Thank you.
Very well said. And speaking of X-Men, I'm going to read a little quote before we go to the next person. Stan was quoted as saying, "I wanted them to be diverse. The whole underlying principle of the X-Men was to try to be an anti-bigotry story, to show there's good in every person." So there's thought behind everything, guys. Who would like to come up and say a few words about Stan? Come on up.